I've got you lot to ask me a bunch of questions and statements for me to answer with either flop or not. Let's start off with AFL legend who has said Swans recruits. Swans recruits, I mean, James Jordan looked brilliant in the offseason with a mix of midfield and wing. Brodie Grundy, there was a game that was pretty tough for him. It was tough for all the Swans tools in that second preseason game. And then obviously Taylor Adams, an injury interrupted start to his Swans career. But I think they're three brilliant players. I think Taylor Adams will get back to his best. James Jordan and Brodie Grundy, we know their qualities. I think it's a not. Now, Abby says opening round. Now, for me, I'm not a fan of opening round. The whole purpose of it was to get in the towns where NRL is the predominant sport and play footy and attract all the local fans to the footy instead of the NRL. However, they are playing footy on the weekend where the NRL is back in Sydney and Brisbane. It makes absolutely no sense. The Gold Coast Titans in the NRL are playing 15 minutes down the road from when the Suns are playing in the AFL. It makes no sense. I think it's a stupid idea and it won't be returning next year. I think it's a flop. Brodie Thomas says Melbourne. Now, I think Melbourne have differing expectations going into this season. I think most people are expecting that with the list I've got to make the top 4, but a lot of people, including myself, have them dropping out of the top 8. I mean, to coincide with my season predictions, I do think there'll be a flop, but it's really hard because there are different expectations. I can see it going either way. Cardman says Saints winning a final. And, I mean, to coincide with my season prediction of the Saints making the grand final, I've got to go with not. Yes, I think the Saints will win a final, and I think they're looking brilliant from back to front going into 2024. And I've seen some people predicting them bottom 4. I don't know where that's come from, but I think St Kilda look really good going into this year. Giovanni10 says Finlay McRae. I think this is definitely a not. If he can break into that Collingwood best 22 around the early stages of the season, he adds such a good dynamic to that Pies best 22. Finlay McRae, not. Giovanni also says Sanders. Riley Sanders, not. He is going to be an absolute gun, and he might even push some guys like Jack McRae out of the midfield mix, giving Sanders that bulk centre-bounce attendance time. What a gun he's going to be, not. Rolls Macca says, big one, Jai Amos for 60 plus goals. Flop. Now, I love Jai Amos as much as the next person, but 60 plus goals would be an absurd feat in his 3rd season of AFL football. Pretty much his 2nd, considering he only played 3 games in 2022. He obviously kicked 40 last year, and that was an incredible step, but to add 20 on top of an already brilliant season, he's still developing, and it takes a lot of time for young forwards to build up. As much as I'd love it to happen, this is a flop. Ryder Henchy, Ethan Crouch, and Will Dufresne have all given me Harley Reid. This is a not. I think that first preseason game for the Eagles against the Dockers was really good for Harley Reid. It tempered everyone's expectations. This bloke isn't going to come in and be a top 10 player in the competition. We need to calm down a little bit. He'll be playing varying roles through the midfield and off halfback. He needs to take time to adjust to playing AFL level opponent. I think he'll turn out alright. This is a not. UCATT getting through a video in 2024. Flop. Oh my god, my eyes are going to be so red for the rest of the video. I'm so sorry, I've got hay fever. Big boy Jack Gardner says Jack Ginnivan in his new colours. This is a not. I mean, Hawthorn have a decimated list at the moment. He'll obviously be best 22 even without that decimated list. And then he'll have even more of a reason to shine. Jack Ginnivan's going to have a good year with the Hawks, even if Hawthorn don't have a good year themselves. Not. The absolute loose unit, that is Jack Gray, says grown men wearing AFL jerseys. Extra points for having a player number on the back. No idea what this bloke's on about. I'd say that Jack Gray's 2024 is probably a flop if they're the sort of questions he's blurting out. James Williams gives me Lockie Schultz. James, this is a sensitive topic. Calm your farm. Flop. Ruben says, move gather round to WA. For me, this opinion is a flop. I obviously went to the first gather round last year in Adelaide. I documented it a lot on my channel. And as you could tell, I'm not sure if you could tell through the videos, like, it was brilliant. I don't think there is a better place in Australia to hold gather round than Adelaide. I think the dynamic of the hill brings everyone together. I think the easiness to get to a suburban ground such as Norwood Oval, which is only 10 minutes out of the CBD, the easiness of getting a shuttle from the city all the way out to Mount Barker, it's such a well-organised event. The city's really condensed, so it's easy to get around from place to place. And I think Perth just doesn't have the same thing that Adelaide has going on. I live in Perth, I love Perth, but Adelaide is the place for gather round. Flop. Campbell Downs is gather round number 2. It's on in 3 weeks. I absolutely can't wait for it. This is a not. I think attendances are going to almost double. There's going to be so many people flying over. The prices for accommodation and flights are ridiculous. There's such high demand at the moment. I think it's going to be bigger and even better than last year. Bonnie says Suns to make finals and Darcy McPherson to finish top 5 in BNF. Flop. Ben Campbell says on grand final day for the 2 team logos to be on the 50 metre line. Not. I want this more than anybody. I mean, I think me and Ben both want it. Not. Bring back the logos on the 50 metre line. William Forsberg says Cooper Simpson rising star. This is unfortunately a flop, but I think he's going to have a cracking year. If he can break into that best 22, maybe take the spot of a Tom Emmett, maybe a poorly performing small forward that we have in there throughout the season. I think Michael Walters might get rested a little bit. If he wants to play that small forward role, if he wants to take up a spot on the wing and maybe even roll through the midfield a little bit, I think if Cooper Simpson can find his way into the side, he'll be a real threat for the Dockers this year. But rising star is a step too far, especially with all the talent we have in this pool. You know, the Harley Reids, the Riley Sanders, the Colby McKerchers, the George Wardlaws. It's a flop. Jack Orob says Fife this year. Not. I think Fife's going to have a cracking year. I don't see a reason why Fife can't get back to his best, apart from body, obviously. But in this preseason, he looks back to himself. Just need him to get through more than 5 weeks before we can start getting full hope again. J-Lod says Luke Jackson. I'm going to go with a not. He doesn't really have a lot of expectations. I think everyone knows he's just going to be an absolute gun this year. That mix of ruck, especially a heavy load of ruck to start the season with Sean Darcy out. But once Darcy gets back in the side and Jackson can start playing that really important forward role, I think he's going to be so important in that mix with Tracy and Amos and maybe a Paddy Voss. Billy Gray says Tim Taranto for the Brownlow. Flop. Kobe Kerner says 1 AFL round should be in the USA. A whole round, 100% not. It'll take away the hype from the Australian viewers. Flop. Lorcan says McRae. I mean, flop. Or maybe Riley Sanders takes away a bit of his spotlight. I don't know. Flop. Will Arnott says the sub rule. I'm going to say for this year, it's a flop. And I like the sub, but what they've changed this year is instead of naming 4 interchanges and 4 emergencies and naming a sub an hour before bounce down, you can name 5 interchange players, and like half an hour before bounce, you pick one of those interchange players to be sub. I think it's just not as clear to the fans anymore, as clear to the general public, on team lists, team announcements. I think it's a bad move from the AFL, and yeah, I think it's going to be a flop. Alex Smith says West Coast. Flop. Alex Smith says Damien Hardwick at Gold Coast. Not, but in the long term. I don't think they'll have a good year this year, but over the next few years, they'll be better. Alex Smith also says, Andrew Dillon as CEO. Not. I just finished listening to the Dillon Friends podcast with Andrew Dillon, and he seems like such a good bloke, I know this is the job of a person in power, but he actually makes himself seem relatable, and I think he's going to do a really good job as AFL CEO. Not. Ethan Kelly says West Coast to win 4 or more games. Not. I know I just said West Coast would flop earlier, but I think they'll make an improvement. They can pinch a few wins. I think they will be better. They'll be borderline 4 wins. They'll have more than 2, but God, it'll be tough. AFL and Cricket Fan Man says Adam Kingsley's 2nd year at the Giants. Did he get the best out of his players already, or is there still more potential? I'm going to say flop. I think it's very similar to the 2022-2023 Freo Dockers, where they overexceeded in 2022, and in 2023, they get a bit of a reality check. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it will be a little bit of a reality check. I think the Giants will recess a little bit this year. Flop. Montage Sports says West Coast beat GWS in round 2, just like they did last year. Flop. Fuse Yeet says Hawthorn for top 8. Flop. The History of Apple says Jeremy Sharp. Not. If he can stay in the best 22, I think it'll be a solid piece for Freo. Razor Footy says North Melbourne make a push for finals. Shut up. Moxie says Flag Mantle. Not. Chunky Footy says Dane Zorko. Flop. Mr. Jones says Richmond start the season 0-5. Let me see their fixtures. Richmond lose to Gold Coast in opening round. In round 1, they lose to Carlton. In round 2, they lose to Port Adelaide. In round 3, they probably lose to Sydney. And in round 4, they lose to St Kilda. I think not. Political Loser says Brisbane Lions Premiership. Not. Joshy Wooshy says Blues slide down the ladder. Not. What I meant to say was flop. Grad says Liam Henry. Flop. I don't think he suits Ross Lyon football all that well. I think he has gone to the wrong club for how he likes to play. Ham Footy says Lions 3-peat, 24 to 26. Not. I could see it. Jay McLean says Pies go back to back. Not. I could see it. Pro Legend says Adelaide competing for minor premiership. I'm seeing a few people suggesting this. I'm going to go with flop. Montage says Simo gets sacked. Not. I don't think that is a flop opinion. I think there's a chance, but it's very 50-50. Bo says Melbourne to not play finals. Not. I see it. Ethan says Giants to go 10-0 to start the year. Not. Very rarely a team does that, and I do think the Giants will regress. Once again, I meant to say flop, but for some reason, I keep on saying the wrong thing. Lucas says Freds to be back in the 8. Not. I see it happening. And the Five Fanatic says Luke Ryan over Bragan Maynard. Absolutely flop. Maynard is clear of Luke Ryan. Thank you all for watching. If you want to let me know any of my opinions, or even comment some more down below for me to respond to, then let me know down in the comments. Please hit the like button and subscribe. I'm so pumped the footy season's back. So much massive content I've got planned. Some really big videos I've got planned that I'm working on at the moment. Some really big projects. So make sure you chuck a like and subscribe if you don't want to miss any of the future content. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers.